So you guys can see the first slide. I just wanted to confirm before moving on.
Yeah, we can see.
Oh, awesome, awesome, great, cool. So thank you everyone for taking the time, sitting through this presentation. What we wanted to share from Pentaho is, just a quick overview of what release 11 has been and what's coming up over the next couple of months and next year, right? So that's the intent of this. And happy to have a conversation even after this presentation if anyone has any questions or what have you, right? So let me just jump in. Like I mentioned, just a quick overview of what we came out with in 11 back in January. What are our priorities for the rest of this calendar year and the next calendar year, with a little bit of a focus on AI, right? It'll not be all AI, of course, but a little bit of a focus on AI and what are we doing, both in terms of data for AI and AI for data, and I'll clarify that. And then, of course, any Q&A, any questions you guys might have, or anything else that you think should be on the roadmap, absolutely happy to have that discussion as well. So jumping in, let me start with the key updates in release 11. Just some major updates here. If you guys want to dig into any single one of these, again, I can take you guys through that. But these are just the key highlights from release 11, and it has been available since January. So if you guys haven't tried it out, it'll be great to just give release 11 a test. So in terms of the overall product suite, right, across both data integration and business analytics, we have updated, we have made some significant updates in terms of security enhancements. Now our position is that if there are any as with any other software, we use a number of third-party libraries, right? And if there are any vulnerabilities found in those third-party libraries, our commitment is to have that fixed. Any critical or high vulnerabilities, right? Our commitment is to have that fixed before the next service pack, right? And there are other security enhancements which I'll allude to as I go into the data integration and business analytics part as well. The second thing that we have done is we have simplified Docker-based deployments significantly. You no longer have to rely on the DocMaker tool to build images for your Docker-based deployments. We have pre-built base images, and which are always current. If you get it from us, we have pre-built base images, and fairly a fair number of with the ability to customize it to a great extent via your Docker Compose files. So now you no longer have to build out Docker images. You can use our pre-built images and update your Docker Compose YAML files with all the overrides to suit the deployment to your taste, right, or to your requirements. So fair amount of Docker simplification on that. And in fact, as we proceed along this journey, our plan is to, and of course, this will also depend on where our customers are in their container journey. But our objective is to ultimately, in a couple of years, move to a complete. In a couple of years, again, dependent on where our customers are, to a primarily Docker-based deployment. Because what we have seen is both internally and with customers, Docker-based deployments are just simply far easier to update, far easier to upgrade, right, and significantly easier to manage, right? Again, plain vanilla Docker-based deployments, not necessarily Kubernetes deployments, but plain vanilla Docker-based deployments, we've seen them being far easier to manage and update, right, especially with release 11. So in a couple of years' time, we'll probably move to a Docker-first deployment approach. Then licensing improvements, right? With 10.2, we heard a number of complaints from customers around the new licensing mechanism that we had introduced with the cloud license server, the local license server, and all that. We have reintroduced the ability to have offline license files in release 11. So hopefully that addresses some customer concerns. This was a case where I think we went ahead with the inclusion of a licensing module when most of our customers, didn't really see value in that. So we have walked that back a little bit, and we allow for offline license files now, same as we did before 10.2. Java upgrade, so we support JDK 21. With 11, you have 17 and 21, and our objective is to support the the latest two, or support at least two Java LTS releases at any point of time. Here it's 21.17. For release 12, it will be 21 and 25. And then we have introduced a plugin manager. Now I understand, in the past we used to have a plugin manager in Pentaho, but this plugin manager is slightly different in the sense that this is there in both BA server, right? So you can deploy. You will have a plugin manager user experience even in BA server and in Spoon both, and this pulls from a Pentaho managed repository of plugins, and any plugins in this repository are supported by us. So there is no third-party plugin being hosted there or anything that is not supported being hosted there. This will all be hosted within any plugin that is available through this repository is managed and supported by us, right? And it's available in both Spoon and BA server, right? So it's not just a question of having it in one user experience or another. So those were sort of the main things in release 11. And with the plugin manager, the other piece is also that you can not just download the plugins and deploy them. You can also disable them, uninstall them for your deployment or what have you, or always ensure that you're on the latest plugin. And with our approach of delivering more and more functionality via plugins as opposed to overall platform upgrades, we see that this is an important piece to enable customers to upgrade to new functionality easily, right, without having to always upgrade the platform, right, without having to always upgrade from 11 to 12 or 10 to 11 or what have you. So that's on the product suite side. If I just look at data integration, the biggest one was pipeline designer. So we now have a web-based pipeline designer, and when we came out with 11, we supported about 100 steps and 100 transformations and job entries, right? Steps and job entries. That has gone up to 135, and by the end of this year, we expect to have all the steps and transformation, all the steps and job entries that are currently supported in Spoon, to be supported in Pipeline Designer. We are also bringing in other functionality from Spoon into Pipeline Designer, such as the management of run configurations, right? Being able to manage, slave servers and so on and so forth, right? So that you can deploy your pipelines to these targets, right? Which you typically can do in Spoon right now, but not in Pipeline Designer. But that functionality is being brought in. The second one was project profile. This is where we introduced the concept of projects in PDI. So before 11, there was no concept of projects, no concept of projects to manage your ETL work, right? To manage the editing and configuration of your pipelines in a self-contained unit, right? So if you think of a typical development workflow, right? Even outside of ETL, if you think of a typical development workflow, right? If you're using, say Visual Studio Code or any other IDE, IntelliJ or what have you, there is always the concept of a project, right? Because you want to organize your work around, in a self-contained unit, right? All the configuration associated with that project, all the assets associated with that project, right? All the files associated with that project are all in one place. And the IDE also enables you to manage it that way, right? You have, all your folder explorer laid out in a way that is relevant to your project. So we brought all those concepts into PDI, right? So now PDI has, within Spoon, you have the ability to create a project, manage all your KTRs, KGBs, your configuration, your connections, everything within a project and from one place, right? So you will be able to see or your entire project layout in on the left hand side or wherever you want to keep it in Spoon, and you'll be able to manage your project from there. What this also does is it allows you to take configuration. You no longer need to manage configuration in those global shared.xml files. In fact, you don't even need to manage configuration in your repository if you don't want to, right? You don't need to manage your configuration as embedded in your KTR or KGB files. You can manage all your configuration within your project, within properties files, or or configuration files that are specific to your project, right? So you can manage all that configuration within project, and you can migrate it from one environment to another easily. Just zip up the project, move it to another environment, right? You don't have to do any other setup anywhere else, right? So for example, if you're moving, let's say, a project from dev to QA, let's say, right, from your dev environment to QA, in the past you would have had to make some updates to the environment, right? Set up the connections in that environment, right? Either in the global share.xml file, or if you're using a repository, then in the repository, right? You would have had to set up those configurations, set up your connections and everything in that environment. But with projects, you don't need to do that. You can just zip up the file, move it from your dev environment to QA. All the configuration is carried over, right? If you want, I mean, you can still continue to do this with environment variables, with project or kettle variables, and so on and so forth. And you can override those in your project properties files. You still have those capabilities, but what this does is makes sure that everything that you're doing for a particular piece of work is self-contained, and you can move that from one environment to another easily. On this one, we have had what we have realized is that a more detailed demo typically sort of really explains the benefit behind this, right, or really clarifies the benefit behind this. So if anyone is interested, we can do a more detailed demo on this feature as well. Then related to this, we have introduced some repository enhancements around how configuration is managed within repositories within the Pentaho repository. We have also improved the performance of some of the aspects of the repository and so on. But long term, we have a different direction for the repository, which I'll clarify in a little bit. And then Karaf OSGI removal, this has been completely taken out. So there is no Karaf or OSGI in data integration anymore. This used to cause a number of performance issues, used to cause, stability issues in a lot of runtimes from what we had seen in the past. So Karaf OSGI, they've been completely removed. Even the big data components are now available as plugins. You no longer need a separate OSGI deployment, OSGI based deployment of PDI. It's one single deployment. If you need big data components, then those are also available as standard PDI plugins now. And finally, we have also introduced OTel-based observability. So OpenTelemetry-based observability is now an OpenTelemetry-based observability plugin. Using that plugin, you can push out all logs, traces, metrics to any OTel collector, right? So for example, if you're deployed on AWS, you can push all your logs to CloudWatch in a fairly straightforward manner. Also, you can introduce additional logging for your particular transformation, right? You can introduce additional specific logging that is unique to your transformation via this, and we can definitely clarify this further with a demo. But the big piece here is that you get much better logging, tracing, right, metrics with this plugin than you've had in the past. And finally, on the business analytics side, the number one thing for us was a refreshed user console. The user console looks pretty different now, significantly more modern and more amenable to plugin based upgrades than in the past. So in the past, if you had to upgrade any components of business analytics, then it generally required you to upgrade the entire platform. But now it's more the architecture is more friendly to a plugin based approach. So if we need to update individual components, then you only need to update those components as opposed to the entire platform. we've refreshed the data modeling workflow. You actually no longer need schema workbench, and soon not even the metadata editor to build out your data models. They can all be done within the web-based UI that we have introduced. Another big piece is OIDC OAuth support. Right? Uh, we have supported single sign-on in the past, but via SAML, and setting that up also used to be a pain, right? But with OIDC OAuth support, native OIDC OAuth support, you just have to update a single properties file. There are I think 5 lines in that properties file that you have to update based on your IDP, right? Based on your identity provider, and you will have OIDC OAuth support, right? We support any OIDC based IDP, right? Be it Microsoft Entra, even Ping. I think Google has an IDP that is OIDC compliant, right? Okta, of course, and a whole bunch of other IDPs that, as long as it's OIDC compliant, right, we support it. And of course, if you don't have an OIDC compliant IDP, you can always mediate through Keycloak, right? And we support Keycloak in this mechanism. So that introduces a very straightforward and simple way to have OIDC OAuth based authentication and authorization for BA. And of course, that carries over to Pipeline Designer, because Pipeline Designer is essentially a BA component, right? It's a BA plugin for us. So you can also gate that behind OIDC OAuth. Then another thing, of course, is a Tomcat upgrade. This addresses a number of performance and security issues with the previous version of Tomcat. And finally, we redesigned the permissions to be more granular, right? So across BA, permissions are more fine-grained now. This work is still going on. There are some components in BA where we are still working on making the permissions more fine-grained, right? So you will get more fine-grained permissions. You will get more per plugin permissions that will allow you to better control, who has access to what in BA. So those are the big ones on the BA side, right? And these are sort of, I've just highlighted like the top 5 across each area. So there are several other enhancements, and we can those are available in the release notes. And if you guys need, if anyone is interested in a more detailed demonstration of 11, we are happy to do that as well separately. But before I move on, any questions on this? Okay, cool. If not, then I think if we I also have details around each of these features, but perhaps we'll skip over that, and we can come to these if we have time. I think our time may be better spent with where the roadmap is headed. So I'll just quickly take you guys through that, right? So in terms of priorities, I think we have shared this with our customers, right, with our partners, and in this forum before. The priorities are still the same, right? I mean, we are focusing on ease of use, user experience, performance and scalability, right? Application and data observability, right? So that you can better monitor what's happening with PDI, better monitor what's happening in BA server, understand what's happening underneath, being able to support multiple integration patterns and so on. And then so somewhat of a relatively recent focus is more around data for AI and AI for data. What are we doing to prepare data for AI? What are the specific features we're introducing to prepare data for AI, and what are the features we're introducing to use AI within PDI and BA and simplify the work of our customers? Right. So that priority has shifted a little bit, and I'll speak to that in a bit. But generally, our priorities are still the same, right? Better user experience, better performance and scalability, ease of use in terms of being able to monitor both PDI and BA and understand what's happening, right? And be able to diagnose issues quickly, and being able to support multiple integration patterns. So those are our priorities. And in terms of, I'll just give you a highlight of the PDI roadmap, right? In Jan, we came out with 11, right? And over the next 2 quarters, right, what do we have coming out, right? So in Q3 and Q4 of this calendar year, right? What are the key things that are coming out? And in most cases, you will be able to deploy these on 11 as plugins, right, without having to go through a wholesale upgrade of the platform. So whatever we're coming out in Q3, Q4, generally you will be able to apply it as a plugin. There might be some cases where you will require a minor platform upgrade, but in most cases we are delivering these as plugins, so they can deploy them as plugins, right? Number one, which should be coming out GA end of this month or early next month, exact date is TBD, is change data capture for relational database sources, right? We have previewed this with a couple of customers already, but formal GA is happening towards the end of this month, early next month. So this will be log-based change data capture, right? I understand there is a session on change data capture later on today, so you can definitely have more details during that session. And if there are any questions, we are absolutely happy to answer. But this is going to be like log-based change data capture, right? So you don't have to change anything in the source, no triggers to be set up or any logic to be written to identify the changes, right? These, any and all changes to the source systems are streamed as streamed through to PDI, and you can decide how you want to handle those changes. But nothing needs to be updated, or no changes need to be made in your, data source, right? Be it adding any timestamp columns or triggers or what have you. None of those things are required, and this will be more log-based change data capture. The second piece is around project lifecycle management in Pipeline Designer. So, if while we introduced the concept of projects in 11, we the user interaction there, the user experience there was still limited to Spoon. It wasn't brought into Pipeline Designer for 11. We are doing that now, and that will be available as a plugin update. So you will be able to manage projects and everything even within Pipeline Designer. The other piece is we introduced OIDC auth in 11, but that was more for BA server. It wasn't really integrated in Spoon itself. So now we have OIDC auth support in Spoon itself. So even let's say when you're connecting to your repository from Spoon, right, you no longer need to rely on basic auth, right, where you have a repository specific username password, or you don't need to rely on LDAP authentication. You will get OIDC auth single sign, OIDC auth based single sign on even within Spoon, right? So from Spoon, when you you know connect to a repository, it'll go through a typical single sign-on flow, right? Open up the browser, you use your single sign-on credentials and authenticate that way, and then Spoon will be authenticated that way. So you no longer need to maintain separate credentials for your repository, right? Or separate basic authentication for your Pentaho repository when you're connecting from Spoon. The other piece is we are introducing a simpler data pipes based user experience in Pipeline Designer. This is where in a number of cases, what we have found is customers really want to just move data from source to target, right? From, let's say, your operational systems to, let's say, data warehouse without a whole lot of transformation in between, right? There are many such use cases, right? And what felt is we need to provide a simpler user experience for such use cases, right? Where you don't necessarily have to build out a whole KTR or a KGB, right? You just specify, hey, here's my data source. These are the tables I want to bring over. These are the columns I want to bring over, and here's my target. And your target could be your data warehouse, could be a relational target, could be could be an S3 bucket, right? Could even be a Parquet file or what have you that is part of your, let's say, Iceberg deployment, right? So any such data movement that doesn't require a whole lot of transformation in between can be handled with this simpler user experience, where you don't need to build out a whole pipeline, right? And that makes it simpler for our customers. We are bringing back Spark based AEL, right? So if you remember in 9.3, PDI or you could execute your PDI pipelines in Spark. Of course, limited number of steps there. and we took that out post 9.3. What we used to call adaptive execution layer. That is now coming back. We have redesigned. We have redesigned the implementation. It no longer relies on, as I alluded earlier, it no longer relies on OSGI or CARAF. It's a typical PDI plugin, just like any other standard PDI plugin, right? And there is also far better. It's a far better design experience now. So when you are bringing, when you're designing a pipeline, we make it very clear that this step has a Spark equivalent, or this step doesn't have a Spark equivalent, and therefore this step will be executed in Kettle and not in Spark, so that you have a full understanding of what parts of your pipeline will be executed in Spark if you choose Spark as your execution engine, and what parts of your pipeline will be executed within Kettle, right? What we realized back in 9.3 was this was a major pain point for customers, because sometimes they had the expectation that my entire pipeline is going to run in Spark, and therefore they had a certain performance expectation. But there were some steps that simply could not be converted into corresponding Spark operations. Therefore, they did not run in Spark, they ran in Kettle, and customers did not get the performance that they expected. Now, those things are clarified, and also we have more steps with corresponding Spark operators, right? So if you want to use Spark as your engine to execute PDI pipelines, you now have a much better option with this, right? And also the process of setting up a Spark-based target, that's also far simpler now. So overall, we feel that this feature now is significantly easier to use in the past, right? And we hope to see some adoption of this. And finally, a couple of features. This is a very broad feature, AI for operational observability, right? And I can speak more about it, but what it primarily boils down to is a set of AI features that will allow you to manage your PDI deployment more easily, right? So just to give you an example, right? It'll be, we are redesigning the control and monitoring plane, right? So you will now get a single pane to manage your PDI executions, right? You'll be able to see all the logs, traces, metrics in a single pane, all the executions in a single pane on BA server. You will be able to get an AI-based health narrative of your, for example, your BA server, right? This will monitor the logs produced in BA server and be able to tell you, okay, where are the bottlenecks, right? Where are we seeing DI execution bottlenecks, or even reporting execution bottlenecks, right? Which reports are slow or have gotten slower, right? Which DI jobs have gotten slower over time, and which steps are the bottlenecks, right? Be able to provide that narrative proactively, right? By looking at the logs, looking at the traces, that will be part of this, right? Proactive tracking of scheduler health and SLAs, right? With, are you able to execute the scheduled jobs within a predefined, time period? Are we seeing, slowness in scheduled jobs, and are they running up against other schedules, right? So these things you will be able to, get proactive information on via this feature. You will also get better explanation of why something is slow, right? Why a particular report execution is slow, or why a particular job execution or a transformation execution is slow. Where is the slowness, and so on, right? Without having to go through the logs and traces and metrics on your own, right? Error log explanation, right? Proactively explain what's happening with where the errors could be based on the error logs, right? What the problems could be, or perhaps this step is not configured properly based on the error logs, right? And so on and so forth. Being able to get that information, and lineage-based impact assessment, right? So given that we will have lineage information, right? With AI for operational observability, you will be able to see, okay, if something is failing in your pipeline, then based on lineage, where could that problem stem from, right? Which source could potentially be causing that problem, and so on and so forth. Now, a lot of these things could be done without the AI, right? It can potentially be done without AI. But what we have seen is, at least in our initial, testing of this feature, if you will, the models now are pretty decent at providing, especially things like performance explanations or, error log explanations or a health narrative. And we have actually seen that it is useful, right? I mean, it is, definitely some folks are right to be sort of a little skeptical about this, but from our testing of this, we have seen this to be actually useful, right? Some as opposed to someone having to go through the log and understand where the errors are and where the problems are, right, or where the performance bottlenecks are. We have seen the neo models be able to sort of provide their own point of view on this, and that being pretty helpful. So we felt like this should be something that we should bring to our customers sooner rather than later, right? And that's why we have that plan for next quarter, or latest by Q4 of this year. So that will be on AI for operational observability, and you will therefore also notice that. Oh, I'm sure. Sorry. You'll also therefore notice that in terms of Copilot for pipeline authoring, that we have kept for later, right? Because I mean, a lot of folks, we have seen that they've gone down the Copilot route first before using AI for sort of operational support, if you will. But we are looking at the other way around. We feel like using AI for diagnosing what's wrong with your pipelines, using AI for understanding, using AI to help you run through the logs, right, as opposed to looking stepping through the logs, that we felt is more beneficial for our customers before we go down the Copilot route for pipeline authoring and execution, right? So that's why we have prioritized this first. And in Q3, Q4, we will also be bringing out an MCP server for PDI. And this MCP server will provide tools for both authoring and operational observability. So you will be able to, use your, client of choice, right? Be it Cloud or be it some other client of choice. Set up the MCP server, plug the MCP server in, and be able to talk to your PDI deployment, right? Primarily for operational observability first, and then for if you want to author new pipelines or what have you, that will also be available through this release. And then later, of course, calendar year 27, we will be introducing the Copilot for pipeline authoring and managing the execution of pipelines. Git integration and CI/CD support. That's already it will be these two will be in beta in CY26, but we expect a GA in early calendar year 27. Unit testing, that's sort of part of our second feature there, Git integration, CI/CD support, and that will also include unit testing. The other piece that we are introducing will be DBT integration. What we are finding is that we do have a number of customers who are operating in an environment where they have both PDI pipelines and they have DBT models, right, to do the transformation work. So we will be introducing better support for DBT in PDI itself, right? You will be able to orchestrate DBT models. You will be able to, in fact, translate in some cases, and we are working through this. You'll be able to translate, PDI transformations and jobs into DBT models where possible, right? And we are also exploring providing a better, DBT model editing experience within PDI itself, right? So that's what DBT integration looks like. Pushdown processing in SQL, that will be similar to our Spark AEL replacement, but of course, instead of the engine being Spark, it will be SQL, right? And then we will be extending our change data capture feature to some major SaaS source systems like Salesforce, HubSpot, I think a couple of others that support sort of change publishing, if you will. We'll be extending to that. And then another major feature will be ETL for unstructured data. This is where we will be extending the concept of ETL to unstructured data. You'll be able to process your unstructured data like PDF files, Word documents, or PowerPoint files, or any Office document, or any unstructured data for that matter, and get it ready for AI, right? So this will include things like being able to parse these documents, being able to chunk these appropriately based on various chunking strategies, being able to create the vector embeddings associated with this, right, and push them to a vector database, or create a searchable index for these documents through other options, right, so that you are able to support a RAG system downstream, right? So once you have all of this, your RAG-based AI system can use these documents as part of that pipeline. So we will be introducing additional steps and job entries that will allow you to do this, right? They'll allow you to process unstructured documents, and when we say process, they'll allow you to parse them appropriately, chunk them, create the embeddings out of them, or other search indices, right? Whatever is your RAG system of choice, right? Other search indices, and push those out to target systems. So that's part of our ETL for unstructured data. And then we will be bringing in virtualization support, right? Extending our data services component to be more performant so that you'll have better virtualization support in PDI. There, I think we will be relying on some third-party components and more to come on that, but that's definitely on our roadmap to introduce in calendar year 27. So those are some of the highlights for PDI. Let me take a quick pause here, see if there are any questions before we move on. Okay, cool. If not, let me move on to BA. Right. So for BA, 11, we came out with a redesign of the user console, right? Replacement for schema workbench and so on. Of course, plugin manager, OIDC, OAuth support, right? And redesign permissions and roles, right? Those things all came out in 11. But over Q3 and Q4, we will be bringing hotel-based observability to BA server, right? So you will be able to have, you'll be able to push out logs, traces, metrics, and introduce additional logging and tracing that is relevant for you within BA, and push those out to any hotel-based collector, right? So that will be available coming in Q3. There are OIDC OAuth enhancements that we are introducing to do more on the authorization aspect of it, right? So being able to support custom attributes, and permission attributes and so on and so forth, right? Everything that OIDC auth supports in terms of authorization, being able to support those features as well within our implementation. Those will come out in Q3, Q4 as well. We continue to do the work of making permissions more fine-grained in BA server, right? That work will continue to be done over the next 2 quarters. Next quarter, we are introducing the beta for Analyzer and Dashboard Designer redesign. It includes a basic PIR redesign as well. So that will be coming out. AI for operational observability, as I mentioned earlier, that will also be part of BA, and we will also be integrating lineage and data quality into BA. So you will be able to see the lineage of your BA reports from within, be it analyzer reports, be it PIR reports, right? You'll be able to see the lineage of those within BA, right? And you will be able to see data quality metrics for the sources that these reports rely on within BA, right? So that'll be part of Q3, Q4. And then later on in calendar year 27, a big change will be in the repository, right? Today we have a Jackrabbit-based repository, which is getting a little long in the tooth, right? We have seen customers complain about performance implications of it, right? Scalability issues associated with that repository and all, and several other challenges with the repository itself. So we are redesigning that part, we are re-architecting that part, and we will be moving to a newer implementation of JCR, right? Which will be Oak, and we will also be supporting Git natively as a repository, right? So you can, it can be any Git server, right? You could host your own Git server, or you could use, a cloud-based provider for, or you could use, say, GitLab or GitHub or what have you, or any Git provider for that matter. So we will be providing an option to take out JCR and use Oak and or Git as your repository. And we will continue to enhance Analyzer Dashboard Designer. You'll be getting a redesigned version of those. Reporting MCP server, right? So that you can use, you can build out reports from, an AI chat client of your choice that supports as long as it supports MCP. We'll be introducing a co-pilot for report authoring. In fact, we have a very nice proof of concept on this, which if anyone is interested, we can take you guys through. We are taking some of our customers through that to see if it meets their requirements, if they want, this co-pilot to, operate or behave differently. So that is happening in the background. So if you guys are interested in, if anyone is interested in looking at this, then do let us know, right? And we can definitely take you guys through it. Actually, that applies to anything that is coming out, even for some of the stuff that's coming out here in Q3, Q4, and next calendar year. If you guys are interested in shaping that feature or want to see how that feature is taking shape, then do let us know. We can definitely do demos for you and gather your feedback as well. We are already doing that with some customers, but if anyone here is interested in that, please let us know. Then the other piece is around, simplifying the semantic layer construction in our reporting tools today, right? The way you build out a semantic layer, be it for Mondrian or be it via the metadata editor workflow, it's still somewhat complex, right? And also for a lot of reporting use cases, you don't need to build out a full-fledged model, right? Your semantic model, your semantic layer can be a lot simpler than it is in a lot of cases. So we will be providing that type of a workflow as well. And then there will be enhancements to the Mondrian engine, right, to improve general performance and scalability of the Mondrian engine. That'll all be coming out in calendar year 27. So that's sort of the roadmap for BA. And let me take a quick pause, see if there are any questions. Okay.
Yes,
right.
we
If
have
not,
one question.
Oh, sure. Please go ahead.
What about the improvements of the report designer?
Oh, yeah, so that's in these basically. Oh, you mean the desktop client report designer?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so there on the desktop client for report designer, we are addressing some key customer feature requests and issues with report designer, but our and those will be the updates sort of provided, but they will be largely limited to any significant customer requests or defects, right? Our long-term approach is to bring all the report designer features into PIR, right? So as PIR is being redesigned, right, we want to bring all the report designer features into PIR, and over the next couple of years retire PRD. At least that's our position right now, right? But we will continue to support PRD. We will continue to work on some of the key enhancements that customers want that we can deliver, right? And of course, any issues with report designer, we continue to address that, or we will continue to address that. But our long-term vision is to bring all of the report designer functionality into PIR and make PIR more full-fledged and be able to support all the use cases that PRD supports. Does that help?
Yes, and how about migrating existing PRD reports to IR reports then?
That part we are finalizing, right? So it could be existing PRPT reports, right? Continue to work, right? And PIR should be able to render those, or there will be a defined migration path or a defined migration tool to convert from reports generated by PRD into PIR compliant reports, right? But I mean, our commitment here is that if we finalize on this approach, right, and we say that, hey, all the functionality that's available in PRD is now available in PIR and you should be using PIR, then we will be providing either a proper migration path and or tooling to migrate your existing reports. Our first approach will be to ensure that existing PRD reports work as they do, right? If they are PRPD reports, just render them as they are in PIR, right, and be able to support them as they are, right? But there will be odd cases here and there where there will be some migration required, and there we will provide appropriate migration support and or tooling to migrate those existing reports.
Great, thank you. We have 5 questions.
Oh, sure.
Oh, check this.
Oh, yeah, I see the chat now. Sorry.
So one question. Oh, okay. Considering
yes,
the new
we have plans to support an official Helm chart as well. I'll get back. We can get back to specific folks on the timeline there. But we will be putting out an official Kubernetes Helm chart as well, right? I think, let me just check. We expect to have that either towards the end of Q3, right? Mid to end Q3 or early Q4. We will have an official Kubernetes Helm chart for PDI. I think initially we'll start with PDI, primarily PDI, and then move on to a more full-fledged BA server Helm chart as well.
Great.
Does that
Thank
help?
you.
All right. Yeah.
Any other questions in the audience? Not on the chat. Okay, or in the chat. So Sandeep, thank you for this presentation. We're looking forward for the new features. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.